Hey folks, this is Kalani. Going to be looking at a bit of gold speculation and how you may be able to make yourself a pretty penny. So there's usually quite a huge gap between this type of video, but recently I did one about potential updates on the Ascended armor crafting. But we also got Halloween around the same time, so we've had Halloween for a while now, and some things may just be worth quite a bit of money after Halloween's departed. So first things, I want to look at the materials which are available in Halloween, and these are the candy corn pieces, the chattering skulls, the nugget centers, plastic fangs, and all the refined versions, the candy corn cob, gibbering skull, high quality plastic fangs, and Tyrion's best nugget center. So first and foremost, pieces of candy corn. These are available throughout the world. They are pretty cheap right now. Interestingly enough, right before Halloween, they went up to probably the highest they've been for a very long time. They went over 2 to 3 silver, something similar. So right now they're sat just above 70 copper and just over 60. So between 60 and 70 copper, depending on how much that shifts. But that's actually very surprising. If you take note of every base piece of material, so the Zai Taffy, candy corn last year. What else are we looking at? Things like the cogs from Queen's Jubilee. Everything went down really rapidly, very, very quickly, down to the few copper mark. Candy corn is still nearly a silver each. That's really impressive considering what's happened to the rest of these festival kind of base materials, because let's be honest, the piece of candy corn is the very base of Halloween. It's available everywhere. So I think it's impressive that it's retained its value, but I don't think that value is going anywhere for a few reasons. Now, candy corn is, as I say, used in everything to do with Halloween. First and foremost, I want to talk about the crafting, because it is involved in a few other things, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So, to start with crafting. Now, 3 items can be crafted from these materials, combined with the skulls, the centers, and the fangs, obviously in their refined versions. These are the Crossing, the Mad Moon, and Arachnophobia. Now, Arachnophobia, is sitting pretty just below 200 gold. Now, there's a reason these are very, I suppose, relatively expensive. And that's because of the crafting process and what's actually required in them. Now, the favourite is probably the Crossing, which is just above 200 gold. Now that does require quite a bit of gold to go into that. And then the last one is Mad Moon. Mad Moon, probably the least favourite, and you can see that the value kind of reflects that, 165 gold. I'm going to talk about the Crossing mainly, simply because it is probably one of the favourites. Arachnophobia has its place, but the Crossing is the go-to necromancer staff, along with things like Final Rest. But the Crossing takes the penny. It's not often seen. It's necromancer all over it, and just looks very nice indeed. So each one of these crafting materials is used in a different craft. Now, the plastic fangs are used in Arachnophobia, the nugget centers are used in the Crossing, and the skulls are used in Mad Moon. That tells me that if people want to craft the Crossing after Halloween's gone, nugget centers are going to be required. Nugget center and Tyrion's best nugget center are already, or they were, the most expensive. Over 9 gold. The fangs are sitting at 450, and the skulls probably below that, 188. So
my transient relay will revolutionize the industry.
I disagree. However, the Tyrion's best nugget center probably going to go up quite a bit, because the Crossing, while all 3 are very Halloween themed, the Crossing has a better general theme, I feel. So the nugget centers are probably going to be a very nice place of investment. I'm not entirely sure about the other 2. I seriously doubt it, simply because there's much nicer shields, let's be honest, and Arachnophobia is very special in that unless you're going for kind of a spider theme, Arachnophobia is probably not going to suit you as a short bow. So Tyrion's best nugget centers, very, very worthwhile. However, if we look at the gift of souls, can see that the Gift of Souls is 160 gold, but the recipe, we've actually got all of them here, that's cool. The Gift of Souls recipe is actually sitting higher, and all of these gifts are very expensive. Now, the gift is what takes the crafting material. So you don't actually, to actually craft the gift, you don't use any of the materials. But to craft the recipe, you do. So that might be why they're so expensive. But if you can either get your hands on one of these recipes, or the components for it, so the nugget center. I'm going to focus on the nugget centers because I really feel that's going to be worth a lot more. Grab yourself either the recipe Gift of Souls or a Gift of Souls, and you might actually be sitting pretty, depending on availability, because these won't be available after Halloween. Depending on how many of the crafting material are in circulation, will actually directly affect how many recipes and therefore how many gifts can be in circulation as well. But if you grab yourself a recipe, you're then able to craft the Gift of Souls regardless of Halloween being here or not. Which means you've got an edge. You could throw out these Gift of Souls if you're selling them at a profit to people who don't have the recipe, can't get the recipe, but still want to craft the crossing. So that could be an interesting way of doing it, depending on whether or not you can be bothered. So grabbing yourself a recipe and making the souls may be worthwhile. Picking up some of the crafting materials themselves may be worthwhile. Or stockpiling the candy corn may also be worthwhile. Now I want to look at the other side of the candy corn. That's pretty much all you'll get from the base crafting materials. But I want to head over to Fort Mariner. Now down here there's a candy corn merchant. And this candy corn merchant is going to stay past Halloween, which means that his services will be there even when Halloween's not. Which is kind of interesting, especially considering that they gave us a candy corn node in a home instance. That basically means that you can get candy corn when it's not Halloween. So we look at Sonder the Seller. Now, it does take quite a lot of candy corn to get yourself a cob. It actually takes 1,000, which is kind of crazy. But what we can do with that is grab yourself a mini. Now, the mini Bloody Prince Thorn is going to stay here past Halloween, which means you've got time to get these 20 candy corn cobs. But you can see it's account bound, which means you won't be able to sell the mini, but you can still sell the candy corn. Note also the cobs are account bound, so you'll need to sell it at the very source, which is the pieces of candy corn, which can add quite a lot of value to an item if you think about it. Okay, let's use this as an example. So quartz, even though we were given a node in our home instance, quartz has actually risen above a silver, when this was right down at vendor price for quite a long time. This was way down at 36, 37, barely reaching 40 copper for the majority of Bazaar of the Four Winds, which means that, I mean, if you think that candy corn hasn't even got to that point. Interesting. I assume candy corn cobs that you buy with candy corn are the account bound ones, and obviously they can drop independently. But where are we going? Piece of candy corn. You annoy me, trading post. Thank you. So it's still up at 77 copper, which is higher than quartz ever was. So even though you still have a little bit of supply in those home instances, first, not everyone will have that. New players won't have that. And of the people who do have it, people may not even be mining it. So the supply may not be as large as people would think. But the demand is going to rise, especially if people want these minis. So there is still a little bit of... Candy corn cobs aren't account bound. Completely ignore that I said that. I read trophy as account bound. Excellent. However, either way, you can still sell the piece of candy corn or you can sell the candy corn cob. But I'll remind you that look at the prices. For example, if a candy corn cob is less than 1,000 pieces of candy corn, sell the candy corn, not the candy corn cob. Or alternatively, if 1,000 pieces of candy corn is cheaper than a candy corn cob, although I seriously doubt it would be, because that's a direct profit if you buy the candy corn and then sell the cob, which very rarely happens in this game due to the global trading post, but we'll ignore that. Then, you know, make the profit where there's profit. those are those things.
Thank you.
But we've also got Halloween skins. Now, first I want to point out the skins which we've already seen from last year, and which won't be coming back. Because if you can get your hands on these, if you've got 700 gold to drop on the Ghastly Grinning Shield skin, this has already risen to above 1,000 gold this patch. Imagine what that's going to do in the future, considering it's not available. This is not coming back as far as we know. So we want to look at the Great Saw as well, up at 600 gold. Again, if you've got 600 gold to drop on this, that would be an amazing investment for the future. If these don't come back, I can see these easily taking over legendaries, especially that shield. That shield is probably one of the best skins in this game. It's fully animated, and it's got some of the nicest effects. Kind of crazy to think that we're not getting that back again. I hope we do, even though that'll completely destroy the value of it. But never mind. Again, if you've got money to drop on those, it's an option. It's definitely an option. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the weapon skins which became available with this update. So the ones which are new this patch. Let's run over to the Black Lion trading post. And have Guild Wars hate me for running while it's still loading, but never mind. Up at the top of the trading post, talking to an invisible NPC, but all of the Halloween skins, except the silly scimitar, are probably going to be worth quite a lot. If you look at the Greatsword, it may not fit a lot of sets and clips horribly with some things, but people really like this Greatsword. They really do. I've seen quite a few people running around with it, and the creep factor is pretty good for a skin. I'm quite happy with these Halloween skins, even though it's kind of a shame we didn't get the others back. But you've got Aranea for a longbow. Again, this is going to be far more accessible than Arachnophobia, and is always going to be cheaper until these skins... I mean, if we don't get these skins back again, that may change, but it's still a very nice spider skin. So if folk are going for a spider look, even though that's really creepy and terrifying, it may be worth something. Remember that Halloween skins have always been some of the best skins in games, simply because of the scare, horror, creep factor. They're really, really good skins, and usually quite expensive if they're not obtainable again. The shield, while it's not the Ghastly Grinning Shield, it is actually really cool. It's a huge gravestone inscribed with, I believe it's an inscription about people dying in the jumping puzzle, but it's also got the animated skull when wielded, which is a really nice effect. I mean, that is a really nice shield. It's kind of a shame that it's in the shadow of the Ghastly Grinning Shield, but it's still a really nice shield. And people going for anything to do with kind of the grave look, like a really creepy abyss armor grave shield with maybe a dark sword, I don't know, that kind of theme would work really well. But it's a nice skin either way, meaning that people are going to pay for it. And if people are going to pay for it, they'll pay more than what it's worth, shall we say. And right now, these skins are actually doing really well in the gem store. Really well. So, Dead Stop Shield. If you remember when the Zodiac skins came out, they were all down at 30 to 40 gold. These came in at 60 to 70. That shows you that people want these. Or that people can't be bothered getting the tickets. One or the other. But the staff, again, is really nice. So people will be willing to pay for this, especially down the line. This is mainly coming for people who... Oh my gosh. Bloody Prince. People who weren't here for Halloween, didn't have access to these skins, see this skin and like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. See it up on the trading post for maybe down the line 200 gold, think, alright, that's a big investment, but hey, it's cheaper than a legendary, let's go for it. Because these are nice skins, and you can... It depends on the theme, but you can work themes around these skins. You can make a really creepy, dark-looking armor set with a huge back greatsword. You can make, again, as I say, the grave kind of look with dark armor and a gravestone shield. You can do a kind of dark mage look. Again, it's actually very fitting for necromancers. But I don't know, these skins, my point, are nice. People will be willing to pay for them down the line, meaning that if you can drop the 70, 60 gold on these right now and sell them later for over 100, you're still making a pretty profit, let's be honest. But that's pretty much everything from Halloween. I'd recommend getting your hands on some Nugget Centers, or the recipe for Gift of Souls. Maybe some Gift of Souls yourself, or go the full mile and grab some crossings. I don't know whether the crossing will increase in value that much, especially as we get new skins. I mean, as I say, that Bloody Prince staff works very well for necromancers as well. Very dark, very rebellious mage type deal. But the skins themselves, I think, are going to be the selling point right now. I mean, put it this way, if these don't come back, and these become really popular, such as, I think the Bloody Prince staff will probably be the most popular. If these don't come back and become popular, look at what happened to the Ghastly Grinning Shield. That's all I'm saying. It's basically legendary status already. But that's all I've got to talk about. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun. Put a pretty penny in your pocket. And as always, I will see you next time.